the kind of core idea is that this is about, for you, I think, and we'll look at this, is about you balancing all of the green screen. So you've got two shots actually from the stuff that's been, the material that's been shot. You've got a tighter shot and a wider shot, and we'll see that the green exposure is slightly, there's not that much in it, but it's slightly different. So most of the time you're choosing a hero shot. That can be fairly arbitrary, but it's usually the widest shot on a green screen, and you go, right, well, that's the exposure that I want. And you're changing we'll change the tighter shot to balance and look like the wider shot. You may also have color temperature shift as well. So the color temperature is always about tungsten versus daylight, or sort of orange versus blue. And quite often on a day's shoot, the green screen like yours that's been used outside, you might have the sun goes down, so the light becomes bluer, and that means the green screen is bluer. So we have to just correct the image back, and we're looking at white or 18% grey as well is something you could research. But white, anything that's white paper is good to kind of remove and to look at for colour temperature, to neutralise it, to make that thing perfect white. So you could get into that as well. But what I'm suggesting is that using hip film or nuke, you don't need a fancy kind of grading system to do this. You just get all of your green screen shots and you make sure that they look the same in terms of tonality and colour. And then also what's good about that is that your idea of templating that you have from this earlier on is that it feeds into the same, so many shots feed into the same setup with minimal change to get the comp to be really good, because the green screen is the same at the top, because that's already gone on. What I should say as well is it's important that that's non-destructive, so it's better if you're not rendering that color change into the image, that the tool is kind of copied from the person that's doing, might be you, but the process of the person that's doing the balancing work then takes that and copies it into the project where you're doing the compositing work. A company like MPC would have an editorial to do that, so usually they're working with a client and kind of balancing, or sometimes taking what we call LUTs, kind of grading shifts from the client.
So let's look at those ideas in Nuke. So this hero shot here is the reference, and I'm going to balance all these other shots as if they're in a sequence. Imagine these are lots of green screens in a sequence. So they've all got a match, and then that will make the keying process easier. A lot of what we're talking about here is workflow, and we're getting into kind of thinking about prepping green screen plates as a separate stage or like a separate job. So if you're scaling up, and even if you've got like a team of 4 or 5 people, you could think about how you arrange the work a little bit differently. So it's a bit like Henry T. Ford, so that you, instead of everybody doing everything, you kind of have a bit like a production line sort of idea. So I'm just going to use a grade tool here in Nuke and just try and grade this closer shot to fit in with the hero. So you could do this like we're saying in different software, HitFilm or After Effects, whatever you have to hand, and editing packages also. So I'm not going to get too much into the nitty-gritty of Nuke. So I'm going to use gain and just try and, looks like the value change. So overall, just need to take the brightness down a bit, look, and I'll find the sweet spot. Something like there kind of works pretty well. And then I go through and sort of do that same thing to all the shots. So here maybe it's like a color temperature shift, looks a bit more kind of cyan. It's got a little bit of maybe a touch of red taken out of that shot. So let's have a look, see what the color shift is. So sometimes this is a bit of suck it and see. Color temperature here is kind of quite useful in Nuke. So if I look which way, just check that that's loaded. Blue out, try darkening a little. So it's blue out and sort of darkening. So just pushing and pulling at the sliders will get us there. So either temperature, in this case in Nuke, is a nice one for doing the color temperature thing, because it versus tungsten against daylight, or just the standard red, green, blue. And I just took blue out, found that worked most successfully, and then just darkened it a little bit. So somewhere around there would do for this one. Just kind of get it in the right spot, right there, yeah. And then let's just take a look at this last one. Certainly lighter again, so hopefully just tugging at the value will get us in the right place. I'd say somewhere around there, does it? So that's it, so that's job done. So what we're suggesting is that you're taking these grades and you're then going into the compositing process with them. I mean, I've said that taking the actual tool is non-destructive. I guess the main thing is we've not done too much to the image there. We've not kind of destroyed it or damaged any of the detail. So you could render out if you wanted, but the main idea is that, you know, think of this as one stage of prep that might be worth doing to make your life easier afterwards. So what are some of the other things we could do? Well, if I grab a background that we're using just sort of for this comp and work quite quickly, and now try and show you some other things. Think about let's just have a look at pulling a key like we normally would, sort of working through that process. So standard is to you know, quickly look at the kind of detailed edge key first. I'll take that transform off for now. Okay, so I'm getting in there and I'm going close to the edge, and I'm using key lights to pull that soft key, and then this needs to be tuned a little bit. So just making the blacks a little bit more solid. Go a little way with the white, but not too much again. So in the keying tutorials earlier on, we looked at this, you know, this stuff. So I'm gonna kind of go with that. Now instantly, what you're seeing with this is that it needs garbaging. So one quick way of doing that is using a mask function and adding in a roto to just literally make a shape around him that will turn everything into black. It kind of says that everything else is garbage apart from the edge around him. So we could do it on the matting kind of level. We've pulled the mat and we're working on the mat to do this. That's one way of going. So I'm drawing in a shape around him to act as a container. Obviously this needs to be animated as he's moving around, animated or tracked to loosely follow his shape. So switch that over to mask. And that gives me that. So that's garbaging on the alpha. Now I could set up my core mat as well. Let's leave that off for now, but it would be the done thing, very sort of common to put the core mat in that we've already looked at. I'll just leave it off for now and carry on forward. So that's my matting work done. So I'm going to look at colour, the colour line, and again I won't do the whole hog, so I won't do the core and the edge despill. In fact, I'm going to do something that Tony Lyons does, and again, colleague, good compositing mentor colleague Tony, I'll give you his a link to his website, and there's some good tutorials that go into more depth and are very Nuke film specific on this. But what he does is he uses key light quite successfully to do a real quick despill. So default key light, but pushing the green channel up to 1 gives you a real quick and quite a handy despill we've got there. We could use Despill Madness, and we could do a similar setup to the one that we did before, but just for sort of quickness, we've just sort of thrown in a D-spill that's more of an overall one, just for now. So that's that. And then we need to bring always the two kind of colour and the matting pipes together. So I'm going to use, forgetting my shortcuts, a copy to do that, the way around. So A is for alpha, and then B is for my colour. Use these dots to sort of arrange the pipes so we can read the script. So that's, yeah, that's colour coming in. It might be, it just might work better to do it, put the copy underneath the colour pipe and have the alpha coming in from the left. So we have that going on. And then pre-multiply always afterwards in Nuke does the cutting out. So that tells the colour to be cut out by the alpha, like that. And then we're ready to layer. What we talked about there in the introduction when I was pointing to the whiteboard, is that you would have colour correction work going in here. Pretty common to have LUTs and client grades going in there on a, you know, film, big sort of film job. So it might be in there. Okay, very common. But effectively that's really a slap comp, but you get the idea. Same sort of thing. So D-spill and matting is separated. So I could build more into this if I wanted. So the one thing I wanted to look at, we've already looked at this in quite a lot of detail now, but in previous tutorials. So the one thing I wanted to look at is doing more prep, helping with the process, kind of prepping up, as we would call it in the industry, the green screen plate. So there's two things we could look at here. One is what we call screen leveling. If I gamma down a little bit, it's more easier to see that there's a brightness difference in this screen. It's a bit brighter screen right of him, so on the right, a bit brighter than screen left. So there's a tool and there's a process by which we could level that. I could certainly look at that. It's quite interesting. But a really easy thing to do that may be useful to separate the kind of garbage thing away from doing it in the alpha and away from the compositing stage, but do it initially with a shot like this. Do it as a first sort of job. So rather than doing it there, we could do it as a prep job. Okay, so let's take that plate and show you what I mean. I'll do it sort of away from the main setup, because this could be, and is in the industry, a separate job quite often. So I shall nick my roto mask there and just plug this in a slightly different way. So instead of garbaging on the alpha, so it's the alpha that's cleaned up, I'm going to clean up and kind of produce a plate where it's as if they'd shot with a big green screen. And there's no reason to. This is the right way to shoot, so that you're only really interested in having a fine edge off the photography that's just surrounding the actor. This is all garbage. You don't need to have a green screen shot on the day. That, you know, don't have to key right to the edge of the frame, because what we're going to do is make that just now as a prep artist. So the idea is I need to take a sample off that green screen that's just kind of a solid. It's called a constant in Nuke. It's called a solid in other programs. So I'll just ask for constant mode. There we have it. And then take a pipette from the green. And I get a solid colour. And then I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to use a key mix that does the cutting and the comping all in one. Like that. So mask, and then this is going to be the masked thing, and it's going to go over that. The mask is the wrong way around, so easy enough solved. Just invert the alpha channel, then I get that. So that's That's not too bad. You get the idea. This would again need to be animated, but it's prepping green screen. So this would be in the industry rendered off, and this would be put on the database. You know, at the company, it would be like an element that's finished, but at the prep stage, and then this would be passed into compositing for them to do the work. You could feather it and soften it a little bit. So yeah, that's that stage done. Prep done. It's interesting because what you're seeing is how uneven that thing is actually. So that's another thing I could show you. That's worth getting into what we call screen leveling or screen correction. And again, Tony Lyons has a good tutorial to show you that in depth. So let's take a look at that as well. Kind of an interesting idea. So this particularly comes up with key light, where you'll get a better key if the backing is made very even. So these are great tools here from a gentleman that goes by the name of Pixel Fudger, and there's his website. They're a great set of tools for Nuke actually, and they're free. They're from his website. The industry uses these as an extra set of tools in Nuke all the time. So I'm going to use one that's in this set called Screen Clean there. Now this may seem a little doing quite a lot here, but have a look at Tony Lyons' tutorial. What it needs is kind of what I call a defect map for the green screen, and this is really interesting. You should consider shooting these if it's easy enough to do. Certainly if it's a locked off camera, all you need to do is just take the actor out, keep the lighting and keep all the unevenness that's in the screen, and shoot just that. And then that plugs into this tool, and there's another tool in Nuke called the image-based keyer. That's a different sort of keyer that does a better job at keying uneven green screen straight away actually, and that requires like a clean green, a defect map. Now we're going to have to make one here, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. I'm going to use Primat to do it. The newer Primat that we have here, Primat's yet another keyer. It's newer flavour that's in Nuke 9 now. Lets us come up with a kind of like a flat green screen. So I have to tell it to auto compute, kind of pulls the key in a quick, one button sort of job, quite easy. But then I want to adjust lighting, and I want to output instead of a comp. Yeah, adjust lighting background, and it's almost as if it's filled in the area that he occupies and everything else as well. There's another tool in here that does this really well. Yeah, Pixel Filler, that one. Needs more time though, but that does it does a really good job actually at providing a defect map, like a clean green screen. So we've got that ingredient as well now, and that's going into the clean plate input on this, and then that evens out slightly sort of strange colour, but I think that will be alright. It's a bit more kind of yellow than we'd have expected, but you can see that it's even now. Look, there isn't that sort of unevenness in the backing. So this will feed key light. It would be better to feed into key light. So that was as it was originally. Look, we've got that even that slight variation will not be optimum. And now we've kind of made that optimum. So what we could do now is that's even better. Look, we could you have to redo the constant, but take all of this, yeah, take all this stuff, put that thing in the background of the key mix, and then just resample another constant, and we're finished then. Right, so I need to be looking at my output from the clean green. Take a pipette again. And then we have a sample from that colour, and that goes into the front, and it's cut out by this again, and it's given us this, and then that's nice actually. So that's a nice even green screen that we've kind of prepped, and what Tony Lyons calls pre-processing. So we've pre-processed, but we've done this as a separate job. That's the important thing. So you could brief these tasks out, to somebody else, to sort of one or two artists that do all this and are rendering off all your green screens. And then with the idea of colour balancing everything that we just looked at, you're in a better place to start the compositing work. So all this, we could write all this out, and then then you're passing that onto the next stage, which is comp. So quite an interesting idea. See if you can translate all of that into HitFilm or After Effects, or the software that you're using. Okay.